you ever noticed how silence can feel louder than words? How someone can walk away, stop texting, stop calling, stop reacting, and yet somehow their absence feels heavier than their presence ever did? What if she says nothing at all, but you can feel it? What if she acts composed, detached, perfectly fine, and yet something beneath the surface hasn't moved on? Here's the question most men never ask themselves honestly. If she's truly over you, why does her energy still shift when you enter the room? Why does her voice change ever so slightly when your name comes up? Why does she stay silent, but never fully disappear? This isn't about fantasy. It's not about ego. And it's not about convincing yourself that every quiet woman secretly wants you back. But sometimes silence isn't indifference. Sometimes it's containment. Sometimes it's restraint. And sometimes it's unfinished emotion. Stay with me, because we're going to unpack something subtle here. We're going to talk about what it really means when she doesn't reach out, doesn't confess, doesn't create drama, but deep down, you are still the one she hasn't emotionally released. Before we go any further, let's frame this correctly. This conversation is not about interfering in someone's relationship. It's not about manipulation, seduction tactics, or trying to disrupt someone's life. It's about understanding emotional psychology. It's about recognizing patterns so you can move with integrity. If she is committed elsewhere, respect that. If you are healing, honor that. Awareness is power, but only when paired with maturity. This is about clarity, not conquest. Now, let's go deeper. Human attachment does not dissolve on command. We like to think closure is a switch. One day you feel everything, the next day you decide you're done. But the nervous system doesn't operate on logic. Attachment bonds are biological. When someone once represented safety, excitement, validation, or emotional intensity, your brain catalogs that experience. And here's where it gets interesting. If you were the person who activated something unique inside her, something she hasn't replicated since, silence doesn't mean absence. It often means preservation. She may not speak about you because speaking would reopen something she's trying to regulate. Unmet emotional needs don't disappear. They go underground. Sometimes she stays silent because you represented novelty. Maybe you challenged her. Maybe you saw through her. Maybe you didn't need her validation in the way others did. That dynamic creates tension in the most powerful way. The human ego attaches deeply to unfinished emotional narratives. Have you ever wondered why people sometimes remember the almost relationship more vividly than the stable one? Because ambiguity creates psychological loops. If things ended abruptly, if timing was wrong, if pride got involved, if external circumstances interfered, the emotional file stays open. And that silence? That's often an attempt to close it internally without having to confront it externally. But this is where most people get it wrong. Silence alone does not mean longing. We're not romanticizing distance. We're looking for patterns. Pay attention to the micro behaviors. If she truly moved on emotionally, your presence would be neutral, flat, consistent. But when someone hasn't let go, their body often speaks before their mouth does. Watch her eye contact. Does it linger a second too long before she looks away? Does she avoid it completely because holding it feels too intense? That fluctuation is not random. It's regulation. Her nervous system deciding in real time how much exposure feels safe. Listen to her tone. In group settings, does she sound composed and casual? But one-on-one, does her voice soften? Slow down? Become more careful? That shift matters. People don't unconsciously adjust their tone for someone who means nothing. Notice her breathing. When you unexpectedly enter her space, does she take a slightly deeper breath? Does her posture adjust? These are autonomic responses. They happen beneath conscious control. This is subtle, but powerful. Another signal most men overlook is contrast behavior. In public, she may act indifferent, friendly but distant, polite but measured. But in private conversations, the emotional texture changes. She might ask questions about your life that go beyond surface level. She might remember small details you mentioned months ago. That kind of memory retention signals emotional significance. Now let's talk about digital behavior. Texting patterns are revealing. If she responds consistently but never initiates, that doesn't automatically mean disinterest. Sometimes initiation feels vulnerable. If she's protecting herself, She may respond warmly, but avoid being the one to open the door. Watch response depth instead of frequency. Does she send thoughtful replies? Does she subtly continue conversations? Does she mirror your pacing? But here's the nuance. If she takes hours to respond, but the messages are emotionally layered, that delay may not be avoidance, it may be calibration. She might be thinking carefully, regulating how much she reveals. Have you ever noticed how some women post content indirectly? Not direct messages, not obvious signals, but songs, quotes, nostalgic themes that align strangely with shared memories? That isn't always coincidence. The subconscious looks for safe outlets. Now let's address the push-pull dynamic. This is where internal conflict lives. She might feel something and resent that she feels it. Maybe pride was involved. Maybe she feels you hurt her. Desire and defense can coexist. That creates hot-cold behavior. One week she feels warm, open, engaged. The next week she withdraws, replies shorten, energy drops. That's not randomness, that's emotional oscillation. Part of her leans toward connection, another part fears vulnerability. Guilt can also complicate this. If she's dating someone new, lingering feelings can create internal tension, so she overcorrects, becomes extra distant, extra loyal in public, overly neutral around you. That exaggerated neutrality is sometimes a tell. When someone has truly detached, they don't overperform indifference. But don't misinterpret this. Overanalyzing every behavior leads to projection. Look for consistent patterns over time, not isolated moments. Let's explore situational contrasts. In group settings, she might avoid sitting next to you. But when conversation flows naturally, does she angle her body toward you unconsciously? Body orientation is revealing. Humans instinctively face what they're drawn to. When others enter the room during a private conversation, does her energy shift abruptly? Does she create emotional distance quickly? That sudden recalibration often signals she doesn't want her investment visible. Pay attention to how she reacts when other women interact with you. Does her facial expression tighten briefly before returning to neutral? Does she suddenly engage more? Jealousy is rarely loud. It's micro-expressive. Here's where it gets deeper. Sometimes silence isn't about you at all. It's about her self-image. If reaching out contradicts how she sees herself, she won't do it. If she prides herself on independence, she may refuse to reopen a door, even if she misses what was there. Attachment theory explains this well. Anxious attachment seeks reassurance overtly. Avoidant attachment suppresses longing to maintain control. A woman with avoidant tendencies might feel deeply, but show almost nothing. Her silence becomes armor. Have you ever experienced someone who seems emotionally steady on the outside, yet their behavior around you feels charged? That tension is often unprocessed emotion. But let's talk about integrity. If she is in a committed relationship, respect that boundary fully. Emotional awareness is not permission to intrude. Sometimes the most powerful move is restraint. If she hasn't acted on lingering feelings, that may be because she values stability. Honor that. And if you are holding on to the idea that she can't get over you, ask yourself honestly, are you looking for validation? Or are you reading consistent emotional signals? Self-respect means you don't chase breadcrumbs. If she truly wants reconnection, she will eventually create clarity. Silence can mean longing, but it can also mean choice. The difference lies in initiative over time. Here's the truth most people avoid. Sometimes she stays silent, not because she doesn't feel, but because she believes it's too late. Timing matters in attachment. If enough time has passed, pride hardens, emotional inertia sets in. She might think reaching out would disrupt your life, or hers. So she carries it quietly. And here's the psychological power in this. You don't need to force revelation. You don't need to test her. You don't need to provoke jealousy to confirm significance. The most grounded position is observation without desperation. If you remain steady, emotionally regulated, self-focused, her internal narrative continues without pressure. If she hasn't resolved her feelings, your composure often amplifies them. But if you chase, overanalyze, or confront prematurely, you collapse the subtle tension that reveals truth. Have you ever noticed that unresolved attraction often intensifies in silence? When two people don't speak, imagination fills the gaps. Memory edits reality. The brain highlights peak emotional moments. That's why sometimes distance doesn't weaken attachment, it refines it. But again, awareness over fantasy. If she avoids all contact consistently, shows no behavioral shifts, invests nothing emotionally, and maintains stable detachment over a long period, respect it. However, if her silence feels intentional rather than indifferent, if her energy fluctuates specifically around you, if she maintains quiet presence in your orbit without cutting ties, there may be something unresolved. And here is the final layer. Sometimes she can't get over you because you represented who she was during that chapter. You weren't just a person, you were a version of her life, a period of growth, a time of intensity. Letting go of you means letting go of that identity. Silence becomes preservation of memory. So what do you do with this knowledge? You focus on becoming someone whose presence speaks without words. You maintain boundaries. You communicate clearly if necessary. You don't manipulate silence. You respect it. Emotional maturity is attractive because it's rare. When you don't need validation, when you don't seek proof that she still cares, you operate from strength. And paradoxically, that strength often clarifies everything. If she eventually reaches out with honesty, you'll know. If she remains silent permanently, that's information too. The key is this: don't let curiosity control you. Let awareness guide you. Silence is not empty, it's layered. It can hold longing, regret, pride, fear, loyalty, confusion, or complete closure. Your job is not to decode every breath. Your job is to stay grounded enough to interpret patterns accurately. Have you ever noticed how powerful calm detachment feels? When you no longer need answers, answers often surface. She may stay silent. But if you were the one she hasn't fully released, her behavior over time will reveal emotional residue. And if you weren't, you'll see consistency instead of contradiction. Either way, clarity is freedom. If this perspective challenged how you interpret silence, stay with this channel. We explore the psychology most people feel but can't articulate. Like this video if it resonated with your experience. Subscribe for deeper insights into human behavior, attachment, and emotional intelligence. And remember, understanding psychology isn't about control. It's about awareness, growth, and moving through relationships with integrity. Silence can hide many things, but when you learn how to observe without ego, you begin to see what others miss.